it's so necessary now that we spend our hearts getting to know our Father, know why He is our dear God and our King. Today, that's what we'll be talking about. We'll be learning about what the kingdom is, God's kingdom. And that is today's topic. So you can write notes today. Today's more of like not really a sermon, but it's more of a teaching lesson to talk about what God's kingdom is. Because this is really where we come in and share this message of the kingdom as we move towards the mission field, wherever we go. The message. Every sermon, whether you hear a sermon every Sunday, there's always a message to the sermon. There's a particular topic to it. These markers are trash. So when Jesus was preaching in his ministry, what was Jesus' main message? Anyone? What was Jesus' main message for his ministry? Some people say it's love. It must be love. Oh, it must be grace. Or it must be the law. What was Jesus' main message? It was kingdom. This was the main message of Christ and what he shared. He was sharing God's kingdom. And what we want to discuss today is exactly what God's kingdom is and share its message and what its contents are. Because when we go out to... thank you. Let's give a round of applause for Pastor John. Oh yeah, that's better. So God's kingdom. And that's what we want to talk about, the significance of what God's kingdom is and share why, what it means for us. Because we are a part of God's kingdom. Let me erase this. I encourage you all, please. Oh, thank you. Yeah. From now on, I would encourage every one of you to bring a notebook and a pen. For every one of you. This is your training. This is your time to learn, to gain, and to receive. And so please take it out. Or if not, we'll take someone get a piece of paper and then hand it out to some people. This is a time for us to learn and to be able to spend time. What is God's kingdom exactly? What is God's kingdom? What? God's kingdom. Kingdom of God is simply the rule and reign of God. The rule and reign of God. And the expression, basically, that's essentially God's kingdom. The rule and reign of God. Where God is king. And that's what we are here, and we are part of God's kingdom. And this is what we want to be sharing today about what God's kingdom essentially is. Because this is the central message for Jesus. He was sharing, repent and believe, for the kingdom of God is at hand. And that was the very thing that Christ preached, and this is what we are part of now, God's kingdom. And what we want to see is what that means for us. And so God's kingdom, what is it? What exactly is part of a kingdom? What consists of a kingdom? If you show, someone could just shout it out. What consists of a kingdom? A king, very good. Yeah, essentially you need a king for a kingdom. What else? People, great. People.
Someone.
And then, what more? Huh? A realm, right? Some kind of location. When we talk about kingdom, right? There's some kind of if we talk about England is a realm. But what I want to share is God's kingdom isn't just a people, nor is it just a realm. There is no location for God's kingdom. It's in Centerville. That's not what it is. There's no realm for God's kingdom. It's basically all of heaven and earth is God's kingdom. Wherever there is, God is king. Everything that exists, God is king. Much of the Bible, much of the story, though, is that there are people who do not subject to God as king. They don't bow down to God as king. One of the things that happens, what we see in Genesis 3, is that we encounter sin. And when sin comes in, when God was first created his kingdom, Genesis 1 and 2, you see God's kingdom. It was this perfect kingdom. God is king. He's a ruler of all. Everyone is subject to him. But once sin comes inside to his kingdom, it it breaks. No longer is God king in people's hearts. And so we see the power of sin that continues to destroy and break away people from that. The entire Bible, after Genesis 3, is eliminating these powers. And we see a lot of these evil, and from evil, we see a lot of, from sin, we see a lot of evil, and a lot of other things that come out that continue to not declare God as king, but God is secondary. And so the meaning of God's kingdom is that God is coming to restore himself and to restore his place as king to all people and to everything. And everyone will bow down that yes, God is our king. And that is the purpose of God's kingdom. And so when the Old Testament, when you read a passage like Daniel, one of the cool things about the Bible is that it shares a lot of prophecies. One of the cool things about Daniel, if you guys can turn along with me to Daniel chapter 2, verses 31. Daniel chapter 2, if you can turn along. You see this imagery in verse 31. You can read along. You saw, O king, and behold a great image. This image, mighty and of exceeding brightness, stood before you, and his appearance was frightening. The head was of fine gold, and so there's this head piece. And then his chest and arms full of silver. Its middle and thighs of bronze. And then his feet made of clay. And it's this basically a statue that Nebuchadnezzar sees. And if what's happening here, and as Nebuchadnezzar has this dream, and Daniel interprets his dream for him, he understands what's going on here. Basically, if you know Israel's history, Israel, when God created Israel, David was the king that God appointed. But after David, there's a huge line of succession of a lot of sin that happened. And so, what happened was the 12 tribes of Israel were split. And eventually, because God and because of the people of Israel were constantly disobedient to God, other nations came to conquer over them. So they no longer had their own land. They no longer had anything. And so they were destroyed, their people. And so they were now in exile. And what this dream is happening is really cool. What's happening is, this is the period of the Babylonians. When the Babylonians took over the Israelites and they were exiled to them by Nebuchadnezzar, what's happening is this dream that he's having, you see this prophecy of what's about to occur and what's happening. It's basically showing us which of the nations are going to conquer over Israel. So the first one we see is Babylon. Babylon led by Nebuchadnezzar. And this was in that time period. And now, hundreds of years later, what we find later in Scripture is that the Persians came in, and that's exactly what happened. The Persians came in and they came over to conquer over and defeated the Babylonians, which still Israel was falling here. They weren't their own people, and that's why if you read the book, a lot of these books in the Bible, they're just wanting to go back home. I want to go back home. I want to be with God. I want to be back in our lands. I want to see where we are our own people. And they were lamenting and lamenting. So they were hoping for this time that God would restore them. But after the Persians, in the history, the Greeks came in, and then they took over, and finally the Romans, who were very powerful in their technology and what they can do in warfare. They're a very powerful nation, conquering over many things. And so when this dream was happening, there was something that comes in to destroy all these things. And so they thought this Messiah that was going to come and destroy all these nations, and God's kingdom will finally be restored because God's kingdom, it seemed like, was no more. These powers, these countries that were coming seemed to be dominating over God's kingdom. Where is God? I thought our God was good. I thought our God was so powerful, but it seems like these nations are ruling over God's people. And so they were very heartbroken and very hopeless in what they were doing. But finally, what we see in this very beautiful imagery, so they believed, and this is an image right here of, let me see what I have is right. Christ and the They were looking for, as they were here at this time, they believed that when Christ would come, he would destroy everything. He would destroy and free Israel so they would be their own people. They would have their own land back again. So that's why when this Messiah came and when Jesus was preaching and was sharing that he is the Messiah and that he is Lord, they were very confused because they were expecting some kind of, general, some kind of commander to lead them out, and that the nations that were against Israel, the nations that were oppressing Israel, that this period of judgment would be upon them. That there would be a lot of judgment, that these people would be thrown down, the enemies of God would be thrown down, and finally God would restore his land and his kingdom, so that God is king, and all these enemies of Israel were obliterated. But we see in history, and when we read the New Testament, that's not what happened. We see this different age that came, and that's kind of what we see in the New Testament, what we're talking about today. This is the New Testament era, where Jesus did come, but instead of a time of judgment, and instead of a time of destroying God's enemies, this window here became a time of not judgment, but a time of restoration, of salvation, of redemption. And this is where the era that we live in right now, this is our time history right now. We live in this time period where we know that Christ had come. He will definitely come again. Christ that came the first time, he was all about redeeming God's people, restoring God's people to save them. But later on, when Christ comes again, he won't be coming as a lamb. He'll be coming as a lion. And all the enemies of God, all those who are against him, all those who oppress God's people, all these evils, everything will be now subject and to be called forth towards God. But the greatest enemy here that we see is not governments, and that's where what we don't want to emphasize. It's not the governments that were the issue. It wasn't these powers and these kings who went against God who was the issue. What the biggest issue was really what we begin to see was Satan. It was Satan's kingdom that continued to reign over God's people, to take over God's people. Christ came to destroy this first. The Romans, they were quite a big issue to God's people, but there was a bigger issue, and that was Satan, that was sin. And that's what Christ came to save God's people from. And so really, and this is a lot of knowledge stuff, but the beauty of it is this: God knows what's best for us. God knows what he's doing. He knows what we need before anything else. He knows we need salvation. He knows we need to be saved. We think we want this, but God shows us, I'm going to show you so much more. I'm going to show you what you really need. When you go out to the mission field and you share that message of the good news, some people may think all you're here to do is to solve our small issues. You're here to run a camp. You're here to give us food. You're here to give us candy. You're here to give us entertainment, whatever it is. But we're showing them so much more. Not this small thing. We want to show them the grace of God, salvation. Yes, these small measures that we can provide to them, the food, the fellowship, the presence that we can be with them, those are great things. We don't want to deny that. But the greatest thing we can ever share with them is salvation. And so as God gives us this, maybe we picture small things. Maybe the people we reach out to are just picturing small things. Why are these random Korean people coming to our country, coming to our community? Are they here just to make themselves feel better about themselves? Are they here just to share, give us candy? No. Right? More than that. We're here to share with them the message of the gospel. To share them that this window of opportunity is here and now. Because afterwards, when we cross over to the next time period here, there is no more mercy. This is a time of judgment and mercy. There's a lot of mercy where we are. And it continues on today. But who knows when this mercy stops? Who knows when this window closes? Because when Christ comes again, it's done. And it's over. And so this window of opportunity is why we share the gospel. Because we want to share the message of the good news to all people when this window of opportunity is open. When mercy and grace is present within Christ. And we share that message to others. The challenge is constantly, yes, not just to know this when we're going out to the mission field, but to know this all the time. To know constantly that whenever we meet whoever person, that we share this message all the time. That is the good news that we are to preach and to share. That the window of opportunity of mercy is now. Because the greatest enemy here, as sin and death, but Christ, when he comes back again, the thing that he's going to destroy once and for all, as he destroys sin and death, or sin and Satan, is also death. Death is a thing that constantly plagues God's people. I am going to die. We're all going to die. But because of Christ, we will resurrect. And that's where Christ came to finally subject and say, now I am your king. You must obey and you must bow down. And so these powers and all these things, God comes to subject and to be ruler over them. And so we see God's kingdom, and we see why we're called during this time to share that message of the good news. I was reading the Bible the other day, and as I was reading it, one of the things I was reflecting on was when Jesus was preaching or just teaching to his people in his ministry. Jesus is without a doubt divine. And one of the things about being divine is that he's omniscient, all-knowing. He knows all things. God, he is divine. And so even when you look at his ministry, when you read the book of John, he already knows things. He shares things that he shouldn't know as a human, but because he's God, he knows every single thing. So if that is true, if God knows every single thing, then the person that he's meeting, he knows whether or not that person is truly saved or not. Now think about that if you had that vision. If you knew and you saw somebody and knew that they were to be saved real, they had real, genuine faith, would you share? And now, the other side, you knew that that person will absolutely never have genuine faith. Would you then share the gospel to them, to the person who does not have faith? Would you spend your time and energy with them? Probably not. Why spend my energy? It's a waste of time. I can move on to people who really need it. But yet, Jesus, knowing exactly who had genuine faith and who did not, he still spent time with them. He still shared the message to them. He loved them, and he wanted to share with them the good news and share the message of himself to them, inviting them to the kingdom. And that's very challenging for all of us. How important that is to share that message. There's one time where I shared this with All-Stars a couple of years back, I think, but I was in seminary, and I'm learning all these things too. And just because I'm a pastor does not mean sharing the gospel is easier for pastors. There are difficulties to it. I remember coming back from seminary one time for a little bit of a break. I went to New York. That's where my house is, my parents' house. And there's a point where when you go towards let me draw this out. New York, I'm from New Jersey, but I'm from New York because New York is better than New Jersey. But there's this bridge called the George Washington Bridge. And to cross that bridge, it costs $15. It's very expensive bridge. And so the way they can get it lower cost is if you pick up people, if you have 3 people in your car, it's something called carpool system. And you can get it for $3. Isn't that worth it? Right? You're saving so much money. Every someone gasped. But yeah, that's $12. You're saving $12. And so, but sometimes I'm just driving by myself, so you know what you do? There's this random place where you pick up random people. They come in your car, you pick them up, you drive over here, you just drop them off at some random spot. It's a known thing. There's a known system to it. And so that's what I would constantly do too. And then my mom, she loves saving money. She's Korean, so she would pick up people, and she would be very selective. Some people would be like, because they'll point, like, can I come in? She'd be like, if they look scary, she'd be like, wait, I shouldn't share that. But so there I was, and I've been doing this for quite a bit because I want to save money. And there was a point where I picked up 2 women in my car, and I was gonna go over. And I remember just driving, And this is after coming back from seminary and just being challenged, and God's just a voice, just a thought coming into my mind, Sam, share the gospel. And I was just like, no, I don't want to. I don't want to. But then I wanted to test it. And this is just me being so stupid and prideful. And I said, okay, I'm going to test it. And so what I said was, because I have to go all the way over here, but I could drop them off here. Usually the drop-off spot is right here. But if they come with me to this point, and if they say yes, like, oh yeah, I'll come with you to the midpoint, then I'll share the gospel with them. And so that's what I did. And then this is really, it's not a proud thing to say. But I mentioned that while I was driving to them, I said, you know what? How about this? I'm going all the way to Midtown Manhattan. I can drop you off there if you would like. One of the women, she shared, oh, no. And she didn't speak English too well. She's like, no. Just drop me off at this spot. But the woman in the back was like, yeah, that'd be great. I was like, dang it, no. And so finally I got to this point, and then I dropped off that first lady. And the second lady, she's in the back seat. And she says, after I drop off the first lady, can I sit in the front? And I was like, oh my goodness, God is really confirming this. But yet I was still stubborn. Finally, she came to the front seat, and I'm driving there, and I'm just like, all right, I'm gonna get ready. I'm gonna get ready to share the gospel to this person. And then she says, do you go to church? And I was just like, what? She goes, yeah, how did you know that? How did you know I go to church? And if you ever see my car, if you've ever been to my car, I have like t-shirts, because my mom puts t-shirts on my seat to protect it. Very Korean thing. But to protect it, and the thing that was on the seat was a Korean church shirt that was on my car seat. And I found out later that this lady was half Korean, half Swedish, something like that. A Swedish, I don't know what it is. But she then, it was really a humbling experience, because there I was, someone who has known how important it was to share the gospel, but yet God humbled me through that and said, you know what, I'm going to share the gospel to you through somebody else. And that person, we ended up having a very good conversation and sharing prayer requests. I found out that she served as a children's ministry at a very famous church in New York, Redeemer, and being able to just be blessed by that. From that point on, I realized how important it was to be so open to the opportunity. Whenever there's an opportunity, to take that. God showed me. And God, I was stubborn to say, God, I'm going to test you. But God at the end said, no, I'm testing you. Never think you're testing me. You are to share the gospel, to share that message all the time. That window of opportunity is such an important thing. To know that we have not every day is an opportunity. There's a certain window of time that we have. And so wherever we go, whatever mission trip we are going to, can you call out the countries that or the places you guys are going to? I know Delaware is here, Japan is here. Anyone else? Guatemala. Haiti. How old are you? 8. Wow, you're gonna have a great experience. You're gonna have a great experience. Anyone else? Any other places? That's it? Oh, majority? Okay, that's good. 4 places that we're going towards together. And wherever we go, you share the message. You take every opportunity. I know many of us will have to do some of the things that were planned, whether to do VBS, whether to do these things to help the parents, but take every single day as if it's the last. To share and to pray for somebody. Never doubt a prayer. Never doubt a word that's filled with God's truth. Never doubt that. Memorize Scripture. Memorize these Scriptures to be able to share to people the good news of God. It is not your content. It is God's content. There's power in God's word and not your word. Don't focus about the delivery. Yes, you may stumble in your words. But the opportunity that you have here is so powerful. When I was at All Stars and we took students to New York for our prayer trip, again, same. We were in the streets of Bronx, and it's filled with people, and it's just like you see whole bunches of different kinds of religions there. It's like Sikh, Muslim, Jews, and a lot of these different religions. And so you would imagine like no one would be receptive to this. But lo and behold, you know who got to pray with most people and all for these people in New York? Girls. Praying for guys who are over 6 feet, 6'5", who are like jacked and muscular. And I would look at that person, I'd be like, nuh-uh, that guy's too scary. But these girls who are like 90 pounds going to this person and just sharing with them, can I pray for you? And he'd be like, yeah. That was a whole experience. Seeing these men come into tears. You know, God uses unlikely people in unlikely circumstances all the time. It's not about being a likely person, as good as that is, and as a gift of that is, that God does. It's not about having likely circumstances, as awesome as that is as well, as God gives us with being able to grow up in a place that's filled with abundance. But never doubt what God can do in each and every one of your lives. God is already proud of you because you believe in Christ and your faith has been won in Him. You going on this mission trip, and let that be a reminder, you going on this mission trip does not mean that God will love you more. Do not ever think that. God loves you completely. To think that God will love you more means that you still need more of Christ in your life. No. This mission trip is an expression of my love that I've received from God, and this is why I go. Because I want others to experience this kind of love. And so many of us, I'm sure there are many different reasons why we want to go on this mission trip. Our friends are going. My parents are making me. My pastor's making me. But I know that there's an appointment that God has for each and every one of you. You may not know the person you're going to encounter wherever you go. God knows what exactly is going to happen. Prepare your heart. Be intimate with Him. Know Him. Know that the window of opportunity is now more than ever. And it's not just at the mission field. It's back in our homes. It's literally here, right now. If we're so excited for going on to another place, there's something wrong about that. We should be excited now. How can I share the message now? The opportunity window is now. What can I do? How can I share? What opportunities can I have? And so during the time that we prepare, preparation is important. We don't just wing it. It's not like, you know what, I'm not going to prepare anything and I'm going to trust in the Holy Spirit. That's not right. Prepare. Memorize Scripture. Get to know who God is. Spend an intimacy with God. Be with Him. And the more you spend time with Him, the more you will share that love. Because more than anything else, if we were to share, before you share it to people, believe in Christ. Do you believe it in yourself? And so, the age of the time is now for us to be able to share and to be a part of this ministry. You know what will be powerful? Our 8-year-old brother, I'm sure, will share a powerful message of the gospel to adults, to men and women. You, as your youth, Paul writes, don't think that people look down upon you. And if anything, God uses your youth as strength. There's something unique about youth ministry for those of you who are young. I'm young too. I'm not old. But you're younger. I think that passion and your heart and yearning for God, what it means to have a childlike faith, it really does expose itself to other people. And so when you expose the gospel message and when you share the gospel message to all those around you, whether that person is receptive or not, share it. Share that message of good news, God's kingdom, and how important that is. And so if we can spend the rest of the time with person on your left and right, what are some of the fears you may have about missions? What is the thing that you are just afraid of? Take that time to be able to pray for each other, to pray for one another, what this means for us to go on missions. So let's take the rest of the time sharing that. Let's just say 2 to 3 people, and then I'll call it in about 5 minutes. Just share really quickly, 5 minutes, and then I'll pray for us.